I'm Bjorn Jensen. I'm the Vice President of Global Logistics for Electrolux, which is the world's second largest home appliance manufacturer. Electrolux manufactures everything you find in a home in terms of appliances. Anything you find in the kitchen, anything you find in the laundry room, aircon, effortless living stuff, home comforts, small appliances, vacuum cleaners. We sell in 158 countries around the world. We have 42 factories of our own, run an awful lot of OEM, ODM purchasing, especially out of China and other Asian countries. The major challenges in our supply chain prior to the transformation was really related to cost. We had essentially way too many factories located in very high-cost countries. Legacy factories. Electrolux grew very rapidly through acquisition up through the 80s and the beginning of the 90s. And so we were lacking a lot of integration between these factories, and that was really creating a very complex supply chain that needed to be transformed. Feeding into that was the desire from the company to change strategy. We went from being a very engineering-driven company selling what we make and kind of shifted to being a very consumer marketing-driven, marketing-oriented company that build up products on consumer insights, consumer preferences. Our tagline, "Thinking of You," is something we take very seriously. Every product we launch is now driven by specific consumer insights, and we're very regional. So we run 4 regions. We have the standard regions: North America, South America, Europe, Middle East, Africa, Asia Pacific, and those regions drive their own businesses. So there's not a lot of centralization, but it was very clear that we needed a supply chain strategy that could feed into that regional expertise. We don't want to drive things centrally. We want to be out there where the consumer is. We want to be out there with people who understand the local markets, and that really is the key strength. So when we changed the supply chain, or rather we changed the sourcing strategy, it's not really changing supply chain is a byproduct of a changing strategy, right? So we basically just have to go along, make it work. But we found an enormous shift in our international transport patterns. So we went from being a company that shipped 30,000, 40,000 containers to a company that today ships about 190,000 containers around the world. In every lane, in every market, with every consumable product in it, with direct materials, components, spares, everything. And that drove the need for a transformation in our supply chain visibility strategy, in our procurement strategy. We had legacy tools that couldn't cope with it, and so we went with GT Nexus. We chose GT Nexus essentially because it has become the gold standard for supply chain management software. And I mean that, I really mean that. It's, 6 years ago, GT Nexus was competing with 2 or 3 other fairly major competitors. I think personally today it's safe to say that GT Nexus has won that game, and we bet on the right horse. We needed a tool that was clearly made by people who understood procurement of ocean freight, that clearly understood visibility, that was responsive to the customer, that gave us the ability to optimize our costs. So when we were working with the old legacy tools, we did not have the ability to do analytics on the fly. Everything was done manually or in spreadsheets or homemade database programs, and we really couldn't handle the volume anymore. So GT Nexus drove a change in the way we buy. It enabled us to buy in a much more structured manner. It forced us into a more disciplined way of buying. And it also allowed us, through the visibility functionality, through the supply chain intelligence functionality, to make sure that we live up to the promises that we make to the carriers. And that's something we take very seriously. We started with procurement, we got it right. Then we moved into the supply chain intelligence using the visibility tools. using some of the planning tools. And the next step for us is booking. So moving away from procurement and kind of just the visibility part into proactive execution of the actual shipments, right? So we've run a pilot project out of our Thailand factory. It's gone extremely well. And we're now moving into our OEM sourcing programs out of China. So the goal is that by the end of the year, we will essentially have moved 2/3 of our booking process from the current extremely dysfunctional process whereby we book through everything. We book through websites, we book through spreadsheets, we book by email, we book, as I sometimes say, we book by carrier pigeon and bicycle, courier and everything else. And we're moving into one streamlined way of booking containers. It's a big project. It's not a complicated project, but it's a huge project in terms of driving the change through the company. We probably have 500-600 people in Electrolux who book containers on a daily basis all over the world. And getting all these people trained and getting all these people to accept the change, that's the challenge. And so we think it's going to take some time, but we also are very sure, based on the experience we had out of Thailand, that once people see what it can do, they will embrace it. What we've really enjoyed, truly enjoyed with GT Nexus is you're becoming a big company, but you're still acting like a small company. Okay, so GT Nexus is extremely responsive, is extremely driven to deliver. I have to say, in 26 years of working with supply chain technology, I've never seen before or since a company that was able to implement on time, below budget, to spec. It's really been an incredible experience. Underpinned by that is it the first time I've ever heard my own IT department speak favorably of an IT vendor in terms of implementation and in terms of responsiveness. So we love that, and frankly, it's going to drive us to hopefully over time leverage every single component of GT Nexus. We're talking about moving upstream. We're talking about perhaps some of the trade card functionality, PO management, stuff like this, but we want to make sure that we move at the right speed. What we don't want is big bangs that don't work because you're trying to take on too much at a time. So I think if we can look back at the end of this year to where we have full visibility of our ocean shipments, we have procurement of ocean, LCL, air cargo, we have supply chain visibility, supply chain intelligence, and we have booking, I think we've come a long way.